Thank you for joining me. We're going to be thinking about the account of Elisha and the Shunammite woman today. Our hymn, the hymn There Is a Balm in Gilead. Not many folks know this one.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
I guess I should say I didn't know that song, that hymn. Maybe you did. But just a lovely, lovely hymn. Appreciate it, Lee, as always. We're looking in 2 Kings today. 2 Kings chapter 4 at verse 8. Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem. There was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food. And she said to her husband, Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Please let us make a small upper room on the wall, and let us put a bed there for him, and a table and a chair and a lampstand. So it will be whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there. And it happened one day that he came there, and he turned into the upper room and lay down there. And then he said to Gehazi, his servant, Call this Shunammite woman. When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, Say now to her, Look, you have been concerned for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king, or to the commander of the army? And she answered, I dwell among my own people. So he said, What then is to be done for her? Gehazi answered, Actually, she has no son, and her husband is old. So he said, Call her. Call her. It's one of my favorite accounts in the life of Elisha. There's so many different things that we could say about this good Shunammite woman, that here she was hospitable. And I don't think it took much arm turning, if that's the right phrase, to get Elisha to turn in there. I think Elisha looked forward to turning in there. It says as often, how's it phrase it? As often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food. I think that says a good bit about what sort of home it was and what sort of people these were. And when Elisha calls and says, and has Gehazi say to her, Would you like for me to speak to the king? And she just exudes contentment when she says, I dwell amongst my own people. Happy where I am. She's just a wonderful woman. And here she is, full of good works, going the extra mile, going to the trouble of making a room and furnishing it. So many things we could say about this woman. So Gehazi says, actually, she has no son, and her husband is old. And Elisha says, Go and call her. And we know what's going to happen. She's going to have a son. And as we think about the balm in Gilead, and let's actually look at our passage, or look at our hymn, pardon me. The second verse, Don't ever be discouraged, for Jesus is your friend. And if you lack for knowledge, he'll ne'er refuse to lend. If any lacks wisdom, let him ask. If you can't preach like Peter, you can't pray like Paul, just tell the love of Jesus and say he died for all. There is a balm in Gilead. The wonderful thing about the church, the Lord speaks about it, and He says, there's no one who has left, and He starts talking about family relations. There's no one who has left husband or wife, or I'm paraphrasing it, pardon me, son or daughter, and it's talking about the divisiveness that was happening, and it was talking about people who were choosing, who were putting the Lord first, is what it's talking about, and the effect that it was having on earthly family members. And we see that when the Lord's own earthly family comes looking for him. They thought he was out of his mind. And he looks at those who were listening to him. He looks at his disciples and he says, here is my mother and my brothers and my sisters, those who do the will of my Father. And so Jesus speaks that, and he talks about there's no one who has left family who will not in this time find mothers and fathers and sons and daughters. And it's talking about the kingdom. It's talking about the church. It's talking about what we find in the kingdom. It moves beyond earthly family, and we start thinking about spiritual family. And we think about what the Lord has blessed us with. That this is how, for example, he puts the orphans in families. There are no orphans in the church. None. Why is that? Here are your mothers and your fathers, and your brothers and your sisters, and your sons and your daughters. The family. So to think about the Shunammite woman, actually she has no son, and she's going to have a child. But something's going to happen to that child. And the child dies. Let's look over at it. If I remember correctly, I believe there's an accident. My head. He dies in verse 20. She goes after Elisha. The Lord has hidden what he has done, what has happened from Elisha. She's in deep distress, verse 27. And we know what's going to happen. Elisha comes into the house. There the child is dead, verse 32. He goes up, lays on the child, and then the woman is given her son back. There is a balm in Gilead. You remember what when David loses his son, do you remember what he says about him? I can go to him, but he cannot come to me. And we think about our family, not our earthly family, but our spiritual family. We think about our brothers and our sisters, and our mothers and our fathers, and our sons and our daughters in the kingdom. And we think about how even if we lose them in this time, we think about what we have to look forward to in the resurrection. And that we'll see them once again. And that is the hope that we have. We think about the family eternal, not the temporary, but the eternal family. All who have this hope in themselves, they purify themselves, according to 1 John. Why? Because this is what we look forward to. And we want to be a part, we want to take part in the resurrection of the just, not the unjust. Do you remember what the rich man says in torment? He never wanted to see his family again. Ever. He never wanted to see them again. So we want to take part in the resurrection of the just. Another wonderful thing about this woman, the Shunammite woman, and we think about family, is that this woman actually appears again. And it's not in 2 Kings 4. To just read it, you would think, oh, we just move on. But actually, she appears again. And we won't, I'll just put it up on the screen for now. She appears once again in chapter 8. And so we make this point. The Lord has not forgotten about her. And the Lord has not forgotten about us. There is a balm in Gilead. And when we are struggling, when we are suffering, He comforts us. He has not forgotten about us. So we have faith. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.